Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptid's Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time we upload new videos. I would like to reach out and say a huge thank you to those of you who have supported Cryptid's Roost financially. We pray the good Lord replenishes you abundantly, and to those of you who will later on. We pray the Lord bless you as you do so. And also a huge thank you to everyone for always supporting the channel with your likes, comments and shares as well. It is all very much appreciated. God bless you all. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. I'm a PI. And I think I'm chasing a monster. This awesome story is written by cfalnevermore. If you would like to read more of their works, the Reddit link to their profile will be below in the description. My name is Rain. I'm a PI. I've been on the trail of something weird. I have trouble believing some of the stuff I've found. There might just be monsters, other than human beings out there. That's scary enough, because humans are still the most monstrous of all. It started with a drugged little girl claiming she was rescued by a beast. It only got weirder from there. This seems as good a way as any to share some of my findings, and possibly put some more pieces together. I've got several weird stories to share, but I'll start with mine, where my whole investigation began. Almost 10 years ago, I was just out of high school. My mom is a music producer, so I got some pretty cool privileges. I was a bit of a punk, still am. I followed a few tours, went to some wild parties, and made some stupid mistakes. Nothing that ruined my life, but you know how we are when we are young. Finally, I decided to go to college for a bit, where I made some friends, Jan and Jose Shelby. They were married with a 2-year-old little girl named Hope at the time. They helped me get myself together and figure myself out. All the while they juggled parenthood, marriage and engineering school. They are amazing people. Eventually I dropped out and put the skills I accrued into becoming an investigator. I wasn't making much, but I was happy. I watched the Shelby's little girl grow up and their family thrive. I solved a doozy of a case, and the police actually acknowledged my work in their official statement. Even though I wasn't making a whole lot of money on my own, with my friends living nearby, I was content. Then, 3 years ago, someone snatched Hope from her parents, right from under their noses. It was at a mall. Poor Jose looked away for a moment to help a stranger, and then Hope had vanished. She was only 8. Police and even the FBI kept the search going, but the trail went cold. I stayed with them often. I watched the life leaving their eyes with every passing week. I walked into their kitchen one morning. Jose had a knife. I was angry, scared and sad all at once, but I held it together and put my hand on his shoulder. Then his wife came in and held him. All of us cried. I made up my mind. I'll find her. I'll do everything I can. I gave up everything. I left my apartment, shut down my business, and for the last 2 years I gave everything to find a trace of their daughter. It wasn't one single creep that took her. She got nabbed by some kind of network, one that covered their tracks well. Personally, I think they had eyes on the investigation somehow, the way they were able to stay ahead. By mooching off my mom, I was able to cut costs. Meanwhile, if I ever needed advice, my dad offered a unique perspective. He's a former Navy SEAL. He's also a hardcore survivalist who thinks a camping trip is getting dropped into the wilderness with no supplies other than a Bowie knife. I'm not kidding either. I have a fear of heights because of him, but I digress. When I took it upon myself to find their daughter, my dad helped me set up a small truck as a mobile home with freaking bulletproof windows. With what money I had and generous donations from my mom, I became a mobile investigator, living out of a vehicle and various gyms where I showered. I gathered up all the clues and evidence the cops and the FBI were willing to give me, and I went searching. I took odd jobs along the way and learned to become a more effective PI, but that was all just to support the hunt for hope. I can be pretty persuasive. Some assholes might call being a woman an advantage in this business. Even if you can weasel a few answers from some sick fuck with a push-up bra, it's definitely not worth the constant harassment and all the other fun shit that comes with womanhood. I'm also pretty handy with computers. With these skills, I found my way onto the dark web. The shit I saw, but I'm not here to talk about that. Suffice it to say, I spent 2 years searching, building trust, learning the language and crossing the country looking for leads. I also started having nightmares from the shit I found. Not all of the info I gathered came from legal sources. I even stooped to seduction and theft at one point. The guy thought I was a prostitute. I played the part. He ended up knocked out and handcuffed to a bed with his own fuzzy pink cuffs. I made a copy of his phone chip. I didn't even have to take my dress off. I'm not ashamed in the slightest. All that mattered was finding hope, so I wouldn't have to watch my friends fall apart. That guy was in deep. With his contacts, I found some really sick shit. But most importantly, I found an ad. 10 years, Hispanic, trained. There was a picture. I only recognised her beautiful brown eyes. I passed some anonymous tips to police and hoped they'd arrest that shit stain. They did, while I chased my lead. A year later, my search took me to a freaking gated community in the suburbs of Middle America. I'd found an IP address linked to a wealthy doctor named Jared Lesterman. The guy was currently divorced, and he and his lawyers had left his ex-wife with nothing. He was a total scumbag. Co-workers hated him, a few citations for drunk misdemeanors, and 2 accusations of sexual assault. His lawyers helped him avoid all the consequences. Now he was buying people. I couldn't get into the community easily to set up cameras. They had security personnel and everything. I found a hill overlooking the area that gave me a good view of his house. I had my camera with a long-range lens to help me scope things out. On only my second night, well, the situation resolved itself. The good doctor left his house at about 10 and returned at midnight. It was hard to make out from my angle, but there was definitely a young woman with him. She wore a bright red party dress, and she was either drunk or drugged, judging by how the doctor basically had to carry her inside. Her drunken manner worried the hell out of me. I was getting ready to call local authorities, but I knew I couldn't yet. For all I knew, this was completely consensual, or at least he would claim it was. I kept watching, wrestling with my thoughts, but then I got distracted. Something was emerging from the little copse of trees behind the neighbourhood. I thought it was a dog, or maybe a bear at first. Whatever it was pretty big. What the fuck? I muttered to myself. I scrambled to try and photograph the thing, but quick as lightning, it bounded over a fence and into the backyard of the good doctor, out of sight. Did I just see that? I wondered. What could it be? I kept watching. After a few minutes, all the power to the doctor's house went out. Maybe 15 minutes after that, a policeman arrived. Who called the cops? I wondered. As I watched, the patrolman seemed to hear something and kicked down the door. Soon he called in a brigade of police cars. I watched in bewilderment as 3 little girls and a man were carried out of the house on stretchers. It grew into a full-on investigation with almost a whole department going through the house. I just sat there wondering, what the fuck? I was able to get some public details from the police. Someone called and they claimed they'd been kidnapped by Dr. Lesterman and needed immediate assistance. They'd only sent one cop to investigate, as it didn't seem credible to them. But he'd found an emaciated young girl crying for help. It turned out she wasn't alone. 2 10-year-old girls were found as well. The oldest was Hope. She was 12. Just like that, the case I spent the last 3 years on, putting myself in all kinds of danger, resolved itself. Jan and Jose's little girl was found. I felt hollow, but overjoyed, all at once. The official story is the doctor kept these girls for over a year after buying them from some dark web contacts. But he'd still go out to hunt for young women at clubs. This time he'd chosen poorly. The girl he brought home injured him, putting him in a coma, then fled, presumably having no idea that he had underage sex slaves chained up in his basement. But with him in a coma, the girls found their way out and managed to call for help, bringing in the cops. So this woman inadvertently brought down a human trafficker. It's just a coincidence that I'd started watching. That story doesn't work though, and I'll explain why. Once all the details were made public, I read through them carefully. First off, the woman in red. I had assumed she was some sort of sting operative, but no, the police had no clue who she was. Furthermore, there was no sign of her at the house. Nobody had come forward to take credit for the act, even after it was all over the news. Maybe she's into some less savoury things and wants to stay away from authorities. I can understand that, but then there's the witnesses. Witnesses saw Dr. Lesterman leave a club with a woman. I saw them enter his house. I didn't get a super good look at her, but I had the impression of a skinny, young, dark-haired woman. Here's the thing, the police got witness descriptions from 12 different people. Each one seemed to describe a completely different person. A large-breasted blonde in a red dress, a flat-chested redhead with full lips in a dark red dress, and a skinny, normal-looking woman with dark hair wearing maroon. A heavier, older woman with brown hair in a light red dress. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but you get the idea. Even the colour of the dress wasn't agreed on by everyone. So who the hell knows who she is? Next, there's the fact that she incapacitated the doctor. It's not entirely outside the realm of possibility that she'd fought off her attacker and injured him. If so, it was reasonable that she might flee. Here's the thing though, I was watching like a hawk. She never fled. It's true there was a blind spot, but I'm fairly confident if anyone was trying to leave that house, I would have seen them. Considering how drunk she seemed, it seems even more unlikely that she overcame her attacker and fled. In the 12 minutes it took the cops to arrive. Next on my list of weirdness is the doctor's condition. Nobody can explain his coma. He did have a small bump on his head, but nobody thinks it would be enough to cause this. The cops found him in his bedroom, pants around his ankles, supposedly with a look of terror on his face, just lying there drooling. Basically, his condition doesn't match that of a man who might have gotten whacked on the head by a drunk skinny woman. There were traces of seminal fluid. Had they been in the middle of it when she snapped out of it? If he was on his back, she'd have more control. And how would she have hit the back of his head from that angle? There's also the weirdness surrounding the girls and the house to consider. In the house, they found a secret room hidden behind the walls of his basement. The official statement of the police is that one of the girls likely smashed her way out. But I know from speaking to officers that that was impossible, for a few reasons. Firstly, rubble on the ground suggested that something dug into the room, not out of it. The guy I talked to said it looked a lot like an animal clawed through it to me. Secondly, the girls were all drugged, chained and weakened from their condition. The chains were all broken, and it's very unlikely that any of them had the strength to break them or smash them through a wall. Furthermore, none of the three claimed that they ever tried to dig their way out. The girls were also found upstairs on a couch. Even if one of them managed to smash through the wall, none of them were in any condition to carry the others up a flight of steps. These girls were drugged and horribly malnourished. Finally, there's the animal I saw. Even I figured the bear or dog was just a weird coincidence, as an animal that I just happened to see wander into the doctor's yard 15 minutes before someone called police. I might not be the only one who saw it though. When police asked the community security crew if anything had been reported, all they had was a complaint about an oversized dog wandering behind the houses. At that point, I was still fairly sure it was unrelated. As you can see, there's a lot of unknowns here. In the end, someone beat me to Hope's rescue. It doesn't bother me that much in the long run. The idea that I'd wasted my time was frustrating, but I was only in it to find her. I didn't come out of it with nothing. I gathered all the evidence I had compiled, legally, and turned it in, which helped the police solidify their case. If the doctor ever wakes up, he'll be going to jail for a long time. I got a nice reward for my work, but again, I don't care that much about that. Once Hope was home with her mum and dad, I took a few weeks off. I spent it cruising between national parks. Part of that was coming to terms with all the dark web shit I'd seen. I needed to detox. I couldn't get that weirdness out of my head though. What the hell happened in there that broke down a wall, called authorities, left a villain in a coma, made a woman disappear and left no freaking traces? I started to accept that maybe it was all the woman in red. Maybe she was just in a shit situation that got even shittier when Dr. Lesterman found her. She defended herself and gotten away, and somehow I didn't see her. Then, somehow, the wall came apart and the girls broke their chains and got out to call for help. It's weird, but it's not too irrational. Once I accepted that, I travelled back to visit my friends. Hope is on the road to recovery. Her eyes are way too weary for a 12-year-old. She gave me a very tentative hug. You can tell physical contact was almost too much for her. She sat down with me on her own, thanking me for working so hard to bring her home. But then she said, "There's something else I was scared to tell the police, but it was weird." "Hope, you don't have to say anything else about what you went through." "I have to. This is the last thing I don't understand. I want to tell someone." "Hope, you gave up so much trying to find me." "You don't owe me anything for that." "I know, but listen. The drugs he gave me, they didn't work as well as he thought they did, because I was pretending. If I didn't, he'd just have given me more. It wasn't much, but it was something. So many hours trying to think. I was too weak to get up. And then, the wall." I could see in her face that she was barely holding it together. "Hope," I wanted to stop her, but she soldiered on as tears flowed. "It was a dog. A big dog with blue eyes. It got our chains off with its hands. It clawed through the wall. It carried us upstairs. It was scary, but it was gentle." "Dog? Hands? Carried? The dog carried you upstairs? In its mouth?" I think so. I don't know." She was bawling now. "A woman came down the stairs. She was so pretty. First the dog went upstairs and came back. Then the woman. No, first I heard the scream. I wanted so badly to hold Hope tight until all her fear went away. but that would only make her panic worse. She sucked in a few breaths while I got her some water. The woman, she was naked, but then she wasn't. She was talking to the dog, but I don't know what she was saying. The dog was standing there. He pointed a finger at us. The woman said, "Don't worry." I didn't say anything. What could I say? I nodded for her to continue. The dog nodded. Then the woman came to me. I saw her eyes. She smelled nice. She whispered to me, "Your nightmare is over." I remember that. She put a phone in my hand and then she kissed my head and I fell asleep. I think she made me sleep. When I woke up, the police were there. At that point, I hushed her and held her hand until she calmed down. I wiped a tear from my own eye.
No child deserves this.
You're safe now. She leaned on me. Her story was strange, but somehow it fits with what I witnessed. She was both traumatized and partially drugged at the time. That makes what she saw questionable. But what I gleaned was a dog had somehow burrowed into the secret room, broken their chains without hurting the girls, and then carried them upstairs. It also apparently had hands. Then the dog went upstairs. Hope heard Lesterman scream, and the dog came back down with a naked woman that was talking to the dog. In her description, the woman almost seemed magical. This odd pair presumably called the police and then vanished. There's still so many questions. I told Hope I would see what I could find out. Hope's tale is far-fetched at best, even if it fits. I've been looking into things. Part of me wants to meet these two. That was either a really talented and well-trained dog, or it was actually a person. I wonder why she thought it had to be a dog. Could that be the drugs? Or was the person wearing a mask or something? They must have had some sort of tool they used to break through the wall and break the chains. I don't know. And the woman, that had to be the woman in red. What did she do to the doctor? And the big question is, how did these two find their way to a human trafficker? I'll leave it at this for now. I've chased leads on this for a few months. It was a trip to a bar that inspired me to find a different approach, which then led me to my current path. There's plenty of normal explanations for all the weirdness, but the weirder explanations have been quite the interesting rabbit hole, and I think I'm getting closer to tracking down the woman in red and her magic dog. Don't forget, if you enjoyed that story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they really would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to tap the notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Oh, and don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will all help with YouTube's algorithm and will help to promote this channel more. And don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. And if you would like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. I now have my very own subreddit community where you can submit any stories you've written. You can submit your stories or encounters either there or send them to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. All the links are below. I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit, and you'll also find me on Discord. If you would like to support this channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/cryptidsroost. Again, that will also be below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.